welcome back. It's been a minute. It's been a while since I uploaded a video. I think we are just past the 2-month mark since my last video, which is crazy to me and also sad that I was gone from my channel for so long. It wasn't really a planned break, it just ended up being kind of a necessary one. I've had a pretty busy and also really stressful couple of months, so some things had to kind of take a back seat in my life, and my channel just happened to be one of them, the main one, honestly, that I just had to step away for a little bit and focus on other things, and sometimes that's just the way it is, and it's fine. I just am sad that I was gone for so long because I really missed making videos. So I'm excited to be coming back for the summer. I'm excited to be like getting back into the groove. I've been feeling the desire to make videos again for a while, and actually I've already tried to film this video once and I did not like the way it turned out, so I decided that I was going to refilm it, and here we are, me doing this thing. So I figured the best way to just like ease myself back into my channel was to do a wrap-up. I haven't done a wrap-up since February. I haven't talked to you about the books I read in March, April, and May, so I figured today would be a perfect time to just go through everything I read and get caught up on all my reviews so that I could start June fresh and ready to get back to doing monthly wrap-ups and all that. So today I have 16 books to talk about, the 16 books that I read in the last 3 months, which isn't a lot because, you know, I've had a lot of stuff going on. So not only has YouTube been taking a backseat, but also reading has kind of been taking a backseat as well. I was starting to get my groove back in May. I actually read quite a bit in May, so I'm excited that I can like finally feel myself getting back into my hobbies and getting like excited to be participating in things again. So yeah, that's that. I'm gonna get into the wrap-up part now. I am going to talk about the books in the order that I read them, and I am going to be leaving any full-length reviews that I have for any of these books down in the description because I'm going to try not to talk too much in the video considering that we have so many books to get through. Also, I just want to apologize ahead of time before I get started. I might not be like the most coherent talking about some of these books because it's been quite a while since I read some of these, and if they haven't stuck with me, then I probably am not going to be able to review them as well as I would have been able to if I had reviewed them back when I originally read them, especially like for March and April. I might not have like much to say about the books that I read, but I'm gonna do my best, so just bear with me. Also, this is not wine. It is white peach grape juice. I don't drink wine, but I really like the glass, so I'm drinking juice out of the glass. So I'm going to start with 3 books that I read for a vlog that I posted back in March. I really wanted to dedicate an entire reading vlog to reading millennial fiction books, and so if you want to go and see my thoughts, feelings, opinions about millennial fiction in general, as well as the 3 books that I read for that vlog, then I will leave that linked in the description. I really liked how that video turned out, so if you want to go check it out, like it's a little bit long, but if you are feeling generous, then I would really love it if you went and watched that video. But for that video, I read Luster by Raven Leilani, I read Exciting Times by Nisha Dolan, and I read Normal People by Sally Rooney. And this book by far was my favorite of the 3 books that I read for that vlog. I actually didn't love Luster so much. Like, I understand why people like it and I understand why it's hyped, but I personally didn't enjoy the book. I personally didn't enjoy the story or the writing or the characters really even. I just had a lot of problems with that book. Exciting Times I also really enjoyed. It was a fun read. I definitely related to it probably the most of the 3 books that I read. I connected with the main character. I did have problems with the ending of that one. I felt like it was a little bit too ambiguous for my liking, and also I felt like the story kind of held you at arm's length, very detached from the characters for a lot of the book, which I didn't necessarily always love. So there's that. But Normal People was by far the standout of that video. This was on my 2021 TBR. It was one of my 5-star predictions, and although it wasn't quite a 5-star read, it was so close, like a 4.5 or whatever. This is about 2 people who are friends in high school, but their friendship is kind of a secret because they run in very different crowds at school. The boy, Connell, is very outgoing. He is like a jock. He's got a lot of friends that are popular. And the girl, Marianne, is much more quiet, reserved. She is kind of like an outcast in their school. When they get to university, their roles kind of switch. So Connell has trouble like fitting in and making friends in their university town, while Marianne just thrives and makes all kinds of friends and really just like comes out of her shell. And this book is basically just about their friendship over the course of 5 years and how their relationship changes and grows and also like dies a little bit. So I don't know, it just was a really great book. I actually I really enjoyed pretty much everything about this book, the characters, the writing, the story. I was so engrossed in this book, and I definitely understand why Sally Rooney is so hyped, and I'm super excited to read her other book, Conversations with Friends, and any future books that she puts out, because I just feel like she's going to be an author that I'm going to continue to love. Next up, I read The Inheritance Games by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Jennifer Lynn Barnes is, of course, the author of the Naturals series, which is one of my favorite YA mystery series that I've ever read. It is so underhyped. I feel like more people definitely need to check out that series, and this is her newest release. This was pitched to me as Knives Out meets Cinderella, which are two things that I really enjoy, especially Knives Out is one of my favorite movies that I watched the year it came out. I guess, was that 2019 now? It feels like it hasn't been that long, but it is one of my favorite movies that I saw that year. And so when this was coming out and I heard that it was being compared to Knives Out, I knew that I was gonna have to check it out, especially because I've loved her books in the past, and I'm so glad that I did. This was just a ton of fun. This follows a girl named Avery who at the beginning of the book finds out that she has randomly inherited billions of dollars from this like oil magnate in Texas. She has no idea who he is. She's never met him before. She doesn't know anything about him, but she gets summoned to this house, and basically they tell her, you have inherited all this money, and the only stipulation is that you have to live in this house for a year. She's like, a year doesn't seem like that much time, like I can do this, but she also has to deal with the fact that this man's family all feel scorned by their grandfather and their father, and that she has to deal with the fallout of that, plus solve a couple of mysteries along the way. It takes place over the course of about a week, and I really enjoyed how the elements of the story kind of came together. There are these little clues that you get throughout the entire story, and then when you get to the end, how everything kind of came together, I really enjoyed. It was kind of like a puzzle. I guess that's true for a lot of mysteries, but it felt more true for this one just because this man really like thrived on creating puzzles and games for his children and grandchildren. It was just like a ton of fun to read and to experience. And the sequel to this book is coming out in September, and I'm really excited about that. I am so excited to see where this story is going to go next, because the ending definitely left off on kind of a big cliffhanger. So I am anxious to see how the story is going to conclude. If you haven't read this yet, I would highly recommend doing so, because it's just a lot of fun and different from any kind of YA mystery that I read before. Next up, I read a short story, which is Winjack by Joseph Boyden. This is about a boy, an Ojibwe boy, who was taken to a residential school when he was young, and he decides to run away from the school and try to find his home and his family again. And it's all about his journey leaving this school and the spirits that kind of guide and go with him along the way. This was just kind of a heartbreaking story. It is a topic that I don't really know a ton about, and so reading this definitely kind of like opened my eyes to a whole part of world history that I really don't know that much about, and especially with the recent discovery of the mass grave at a residential school in Canada, I feel like educating myself more on a topic like this is so important. And I definitely want to continue to read books about Indigenous people and their lives and struggles and triumphs and everything. My only negative for this book is that upon finishing it, I did want to do a little bit of research. I wanted to know if this was an Own Voices story, and I discovered that it is not. Joseph Boyden is not Indigenous. He is not a part of the First Nations community, and so I did see a couple of articles where people said that they didn't really necessarily believe that this was his story to tell. Now I want to go and seek out other books and resources by actual Own Voices authors and reviewers and everything to continue to educate myself. So I did think this was like a good introduction to something like this dark point in history that I feel like not a lot of people are super aware of, but it's by no means the end of me trying to educate myself on something like this. I definitely want to go and seek out more books that I can learn even more from. So there's that. I did enjoy this. I did think it was well written. I just am sad to know that it's not an Own Voices story. Next up, I actually read a manga that I've been meaning to get to for quite a while, and that is Full Metal Alchemist Volume 1. This is actually a bind up of the first 3 volumes, so I guess it's volumes 1, 2, and 3, but it's volume 1 of the bind-ups. Anyway, this is a manga series that Cole has been begging me to read for the longest time because he really wants to watch the anime with me, and I also really want to watch the anime, especially now after finally like starting this series and getting into the story. I'm so excited to continue on and eventually watch the anime. So this is about two brothers who are state alchemists, and alchemy is kind of like a combination of magic and art and science, and it's all about like creation and the world. And before the book starts, these two brothers are doing some kind of experiment with alchemy, and they end up injuring themselves. One of the brothers lost his arm and his leg, so he has a metal arm and a metal leg, and the other brother basically lost his entire body, and his soul lives in an entirely metal suit. So while they are on like assignments for the State Alchemists Society or whatever it's called, they are also on a mission to figure out how to get their bodies back and how to right the wrongs that they caused. It's full of action and adventure, so many characters and so much stuff going on, and this is just the beginning. There are like, I think 12 or 13 volumes total, and so if the rest of them are just as fun as this one, then I think this is going to be a series that I will absolutely love. I love these two brothers and I love their relationship, but I also love that they are very distinct from each other. They have two very different personalities, and they have very different relationships with the people around them. So I'm excited to continue to explore that in future volumes. I've been waiting for a while for the volume 2 bind up. I cannot find it anywhere. I have ordered it from several different places and my order keeps getting canceled. It is not available in any bookstores anywhere near me or online, not even on Amazon. I can find volumes 3 through 12 everywhere, but I can't find volume 2 for some reason. So I may have to resort to getting like an ebook version of it or something, but I'm excited to continue on with this, and hopefully I will continue to love it as much as I loved this first volume. So those were all the books that I read in March. Moving on to April, I actually only finished 2 books in April. It was not a good reading month for me at all. The first book I read in April was Dear Justice by Nick Stone. This is the sequel slash companion to Dear Martin, which came out a couple of years ago, but I only read last year for the first time, and it was one of my favorite books of 2020. So when I found out that there was going to be a sequel following a side character that was introduced in the first book, I was super excited for it, and I'm really glad that I finally got around to reading it because I really enjoyed this one. So this book follows a character named Quan, who in the first book, Dear Martin, we find out has recently been arrested for killing a police officer. And in this second book, Quan is waiting for a court date. He is in jail and he is just trying to make it day to day. And he decides to start writing letters to Justice, who was the main character of the first book, to just talk about his thoughts and feelings and process everything that's happened to him and what's going on in the prison system. And so we're getting Quan's story while he's in prison, writing these letters to Justice. But we also do see some stuff from Justice's perspective. We get to see some of our favorite characters from book 1 kind of also trying to help Quan and figure out exactly what's going on and what landed him in prison in the first place. I really enjoyed how this book brought attention to a very different set of problems that people of color face. This book is focused more on the prison system and how unjust the prison system in the United States is, whereas the first book really focused on probably more of like a Black Lives Matter type of situation. This book definitely focuses more on the people that society often just casts aside. And although I do think you could read these books separately, you could read them as standalones if you are only interested in one or the other, I think that they function really well as a duology. I just think that these books need to be required reading for high school students because they're educational and informative, but they're also well written, they're good books, and they probably offer a lot more study material, like in-depth questions that you could do in a classroom than any of the books that high schools are teaching right now, because they're just both really great books. I do think I prefer Dear Martin just a little bit just because of the structure of that story and the way everything kind of played out, but I think that Dear Justice is also a really important book, and I really also liked the way that it was written, and I liked the way it played out, and I liked the fact that everything is not so straightforward. It's not black and white like a lot of people want to make things out to be. I don't know, I just really liked it. I would really recommend it. If you are at all interested, then I would recommend checking it out. And then by stark contrast, the other book that I read in April was Every Value Break by Peter Swanson. This is an adult mystery thriller about a woman who is getting ready to marry the perfect man, essentially. And a few weeks before the wedding, she goes on a bachelorette trip with some friends, and she ends up having a one-night stand with a man she meets in the bar on her trip. Flash forward a few weeks, she has her wedding. She and her new husband leave to go on their honeymoon, and the man that she had this one-night stand with shows up, basically saying, I think we're meant to be, we should be together, blah, blah, blah. And she has to figure out what exactly is going on. Like, why did he show up? How did he even find her? And also, is something else going on that she doesn't really understand? And this book was not good. I really, really didn't like it. Basically, the only takeaway from this book, like literally the only thing you need to know from this book, like you don't have to read it. I will tell you the message of this book, and that is, men are trash. Like, they all suck. Every single male character in this book was the worst. I have read Peter Swanson in the past. I've read a couple of books by him in the past, and I really enjoyed The Kind Worth Killing, but I really did not enjoy 8 Perfect Murders. And now with this book also being just not good, I think I might be done with his books forever. There are some other books that he's written that maybe sound okay, but I don't love the way that he writes female characters. I don't really love the way that he structures his mysteries. I just don't think that he's an author that I'm going to continue to enjoy. So I think it might be better for me to just say goodbye to his books for the foreseeable future, if not forever. I don't want to continue to put myself through reading experiences that are not enjoyable, and this one was not enjoyable. It was not a good book at all. So moving on to May, like I said at the beginning, May was a really good reading month. I ended up reading 8 or 9 books, I think, in May, which is the most I've read of any month this entire year so far. So I'm really happy that I've finally getting my reading groove back. The first book that I finished in May was The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. The Midnight Library is a super hyped book on BookTube right now, so I'd be surprised if you hadn't heard about it. But it is about a woman named Nora who decides that she and everyone in her life would be better off if she just killed herself. So she does, or she tries to, and she ends up in the Midnight Library, which is kind of this like limbo in-between space where she gets the opportunity to live her life as if she had made various other choices. Any big moment in her life, if she had chosen something different, then she gets to see how it would have played out. And she can stay in that life as long as it doesn't disappoint her. And as soon as she starts feeling disappointed, she is taken back to the Midnight Library and she can never go to that life again. I think the idea behind this book is super interesting. Like this idea of a midnight library, this idea of getting to see how your life would play out in various other circumstances is really fascinating. My problem with this book was that, one, it was super repetitive. You can only throw in some variation in the way that she chose to live her life so many times before it becomes very repetitive. And I did feel like it just started to kind of drag as we kept getting these repetitive scenes of her making these decisions and living her life in these different ways. A lot of times her life was similar to her actual life, except for 1 or 2 little things. So while there were some really interesting moments the first couple of times it happened, I did start to get a little bit bogged down with just like the repetitiveness of it. My other big problem with the book was that there was definitely like a moral to the story. There was a message that the author wanted you to get from the story, and he did not do a subtle job of telling you what the message he wanted you to get was. Like, he pretty much beat you over the head with it, fed it to you with a spoon. Like, you didn't have any room to interpret this story in any other way than the way that the author wanted you to interpret it. I could understand what the story was trying to do without it like being beaten over my head. You know what I'm trying to say? So while I did enjoy it, and I do think that it was well written, and I think it's a super interesting idea, I did have some problems with it that didn't allow it to be a new favorite like I kind of thought it would be. Or not that I thought it would be a new favorite, but I guess I don't understand the hype as much as what everybody was hyping it up to be. Like, I get why people love it, but I don't think it necessarily lives up to the hype that it gets. Next up, I read a short story collection called How to Pronounce Knife. I read this because Kayla of our Books and Lala had reviewed it in a recent wrap-up and said it was like her favorite short story collection that she'd ever read, and then I saw a couple other people recommend it, and so I decided to give it a go, and I enjoyed it. It's all about people who are from Laos who have immigrated to the Western world. It doesn't really ever say specifically if it's like the United States or Canada or Great Britain or whatever. You just kind of get the idea that they're moving from Laos to somewhere else and trying to fit into a new society, a new culture, whatever. And I do think that it was really interesting. I thought it was super well written. I really enjoyed all of the aspects of Laos Culture Lauschen, is that, I don't know. I do think the author did a really good job of including culture with questioning like how to fit in a new society. But it is a short story collection, and unfortunately for me, no short story collection I think is ever going to be perfect. There were some hits and there were some misses, and then there were some that I just felt kind of like meh about. My favorite stories in the collection were the first story, which was called How to Pronounce Knife, the title story, and I also really enjoyed Chikachi. I thought that one was really fun, and I really enjoyed Picking Worms, which was the final story in the collection. So it started on a really big high and it ended on a really big high, and then it just kind of like went like this, kind of in the middle. So I enjoyed it. I definitely understand why people love it. It just wasn't like perfect for me, and I think that's going to be true for any short story collection I ever read. Like, I just can't imagine that I'm ever going to read a short story collection that hits a perfect nail on the head every single time, but maybe there's one out there. We'll see. Next up, I listened to The Hill We Climb by Amanda Gorman. This was the poem that Amanda Gorman read at Joe Biden's inauguration back in January, and I got the audiobook from Libro FM. It's a super short audiobook. It's like 9 minutes long. She reads the poem, and then there's like also a little introduction from Oprah. I think it's like a well-written poem. Hearing her read it out loud is just so great. I wouldn't necessarily like pay for the audiobook. I got it for free basically as part of the ALC program from Libro FM. I think that if you want to like hear her give this poem, like read this poem, then just go like watch it on YouTube, because I'm sure it's there somewhere, her reading it at the inauguration. But because it was available to me, I just got it from Libro FM and then I listened to it, and I really enjoyed it, and I would highly recommend checking it out if you haven't yet. Next up, I actually reread a comic, and that is Paper Girls Volume 1 by Brian K. Vaughan and Cliff Chang and some other people. This is Volume 1 of the Paper Girls graphic novel series, which is all about these 4 girls in the 1980s who are paper girls, and one day they are all out on their morning paper route, and some strange things start happening in their town, and they start to realize that they are not alone, and things get weirder from there. I think that this comic series is a lot of fun. I initially read this one and Volume 2 back in, I think, 2016 when the series was just starting, and I never continued on with it because after I read the first 2 volumes, the next one wasn't coming out for a while, and then I just like never got back to it once more volumes did come out. But I was just scrolling through my library's availability one day, and I saw that they had all of the volumes of Paper Girls available, and so I reread Volume 1 with the intention of going back and rereading them all, basically, like rereading the first 2 volumes and then reading the rest of the series, because it is one that I definitely want to see how it continues and where it ends up. My dad's calling me. Hello? I don't remember what I was saying because my dad called and talked to me for 20 minutes, which never happens. Okay, I think I was talking about Paper Girls. This is, I already said what it was about. I think what I was gonna say was, if you like Stranger Things, like 80s vibes, like old school stuff like that, then this is something you should definitely pick up. I think it's a ton of fun, and I'm super interested in seeing where the series is gonna go. So I'll probably be getting around to volumes 2 through 6, I believe, total, probably before the end of the year, because I want to know how it's gonna keep going and how it's gonna end. So there's that. Next up, I read another dud, unfortunately, and that was Save the Date by Morgan Matson. I didn't realize that Morgan Matson had a new book coming out this year, and I kept seeing it pop up on Twitter over the last month, and I decided that I was kind of interested in that one, but I had one of her books unread on my shelf already, and I figured I need to give this one a go before I buy another one. And I read this, and I didn't really like it that much. It follows a girl named Charlie whose sister is getting married, and she has a super strong relationship with all of her siblings, and she is so excited that for the first time in like several years, all of her siblings are going to be back in their hometown, staying under the same roof. She is also feeling a little bit bittersweet about the fact that her parents have just announced that they are selling her childhood home, and so she's feeling a little bit lost, and she's just excited for all her family to be there. But of course, because it couldn't go perfectly in the slightest, every single thing that could go wrong goes wrong, and it doesn't quite turn out how Charlie imagined it would. I really liked the idea of the story, and I really liked the family aspect of the story. I really enjoy reading books about siblings, like strong sibling relationships, especially big families like this. I love that stuff. I have a big family, and I'm super close with my cousins, and me and my brother are super close, and so I just really enjoyed that aspect of it. But I feel like the main character was the most spoiled, self self-centered person that you could imagine. She basically, everything that happened was like a slight to her, like everything was offensive to her, and she just did not grasp the scope of the entire story. I also didn't find it super believable that literally everything that could go wrong with this wedding went wrong. It gave me so much anxiety reading about every single problem popping up. As a person who planned and had a wedding last year, I felt so bad for the bride and groom having to deal with all of these things. Like I would not want to get married if all of this stuff was happening, like the days leading up to my wedding. It would stress me out way too much. I would just be done. I'd walk away. I couldn't imagine. It just genuinely gave me anxiety. I had to put the book down a couple times because I would just couldn't handle how much this stuff was going wrong. So yeah, unfortunately, not a winner, not a fave. I don't know that I'm going to read Morgan Matsson's newest release. I have really enjoyed her books in the past. I've really enjoyed the writing style and the characters and storylines, but this one just did not do it for me. It did not work for me. Next up, I read another YA mystery, and that was Good Girl, Bad Blood by Holly Jackson. This is the sequel to A Good Girl's Guide to Murder, which is a book that I read last year and I really enjoyed. And I really enjoyed this one as well. Though I didn't enjoy it quite as much, I definitely was excited to be back with these characters and reading about new mysteries. The first book is its own contained mystery, and the second book is also its own contained mystery, but the characters are also still dealing with the fallout of all the reveals that happened at the end of the first book. So you definitely need to read these books in order. You can't really read them as standalones. I enjoy YA mysteries for just how much fun they are, and sometimes they are predictable, but not always. And this one wasn't necessarily predictable so much as like the big reveal that happened was kind of, it came out of left field. Like it came out of nowhere. There were no hints or clues to what was going to happen basically throughout the book. Like there was this one aspect of the story thrown in towards the end of the book that tied into the bigger mystery, and I didn't really like how that was done, just because it felt like kind of a trick almost. Like you're putting all these pieces together and then it's just thrown this new thing in right there at the end. But I did really enjoy getting back with these characters. I really like the mixed media aspect of these books. The first book was all about the main character doing a project, so she had a lot of like interviews and notes and things that were thrown into the story. And this one, she has decided to start her own podcast, and so there's like this podcast element, and it's got a full cast narration. Like the audiobook has a full cast narration and everything. So I really enjoyed my reading experience, and I was really excited to learn that there's actually going to be a third book in the series that comes out, I think, later this year in the UK and then early next year in the United States. So I will be very interested to see how the series continues and concludes. I think the third book's gonna be the last book. So I'm excited to see where it's gonna go from here, and hopefully I will enjoy it just as much as I did the first two. I only have a couple more books to talk about, so we're getting there. The next book is Shelter by Jung Yoon. This was also on my 2021 TBR. This was a 5-star prediction for me, and unfortunately it wasn't a 5-star read, but I did really enjoy it. So this is about a man named Kyung who is having some financial difficulties, and he and his wife are getting ready to sell their house. But one day the realtor is at their house, and they look out into the backyard and they see this woman coming through their backyard, and she is completely naked. And as they continue to watch and as she gets closer, Kyung realizes that it's his mother. And so he runs out into the yard and he asks her what happens. He sees that she's kind of bruised and cut up and beaten up, and he asks her what happens, and come to find out her and Kyung's father have been attacked, and she is suffering from several days of torture. And so the story kind of goes from there. Kyung's parents end up moving into the house with Kyung and his wife. It's pretty obvious that there's more to the story than what Kyung's parents are telling people, but Kyung himself is also keeping secrets. He doesn't want his family to know how much he is struggling financially. He and his parents are kind of estranged. They don't have a strong relationship, and so there's this underlying tension throughout the story. It's kind of a mystery, but it's not really a mystery. It's more of just like this slow burn, intense literary work, and it's really about family and identity and the complex relationship that parents and children have with each other. And I thought it was really well written. I really enjoyed the fact that the tension just kept building. Like I kept wanting to read because I wanted to know if we were ever going to find out what exactly happened and what exactly is going on with this family. My biggest problem with it was that I didn't really find any of the characters to be likable. I don't necessarily always have to agree with or root for characters to enjoy a story, But with a story like this, I feel like I had to understand the motivations of the characters, or at least be rooting for them in some way. And I didn't feel that way. I didn't feel like any of the characters were super likable or like had really any like super redeeming qualities. Unfortunately, I felt like there was something lacking in a lot of the characterization that couldn't make me love it as much as I wanted to. And I do think it's well written, and I understand like that it is an important read, and I think more people should read it. It just wasn't like the perfect book for me. Unfortunately, it wasn't like exactly what I wanted it to be. So not a 5-star read, but I still enjoyed it, and I would recommend it if you're looking for something with a lot of like complex family relationships, tension, interesting plotline that will kind of keep you guessing until the big reveals at the end. Although I wouldn't call them big reveals because it's not a mystery. It's just like an intense literary kind of story that does have some mystery elements to it. Then I would give this one a go. And the final book that I read in May was another book off my 2021 TBR, and that was The Vanishing Half by Britt Bennett. This is a book that I'm not actually going to talk too much about because I am planning on doing an entire video on the Women's Prize for Fiction shortlist. I'm in the process of reading the entire shortlist right now. So I'm going to be doing a whole video of me talking about my thoughts and feelings and opinions on all the books on the shortlist. So I will just briefly say that I did really enjoy this. This is a super hyped book, and I've been putting it off for almost a year now, and I'm mad that I put it off for so long because I ended up really enjoying it. Again, not a perfect book for me. It wasn't a 5-star read, but it was like a 4-star read, probably like maybe a 4.5, 4.25, I don't know. There were parts of it that I enjoyed, and there were parts of it that kind of dragged for me, but overall I think that it's a super important story, and I will be very interested to see how it kind of stacks up against the other books on the shortlist. I am so excited for anything Britt Bennett writes in the future because she has basically solidified herself as an author that I will always pick up because I've enjoyed both of the books that I've read by her. So that's all I'm going to say on this one. I will go into a little bit more detail when I talk about it, probably later this month. Those are all the books that I read over the course of the last 3 months. It was a pretty varied reading time. There were some books that I loved, there were some books I didn't love, but overall I'm just glad to finally like be in the mood to read again, and hopefully this summer will be just a great reading time. Hopefully I'll read a ton of really great books. Let me know in the comments if you've read any of the books that I mentioned in this video and what you thought about them. Do you have similar or different opinions to me? I'd really love to know. Also, let me know some books that you read over the course of the last few months, or maybe your favorite book that you read in the spring. I'd really love to know that as well. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you again very soon. Bye!